Good afternoon. Hi, Angelica.
Hello, how are you today?
I can't complain. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Thank
Good.
you for
Good.
joining us this evening.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so looks like a few more people are coming on.
Wonderful.
Let's see. All right, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Absolutely.
So I'll just start off with just a few words and then a little intro of you, and then I'll let you get started.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I think just a few more people. We had a few more people into RSVP. So
Okay.
what else? Yeah, like I said, just give them a couple of minutes.
Sure. I've got time.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Angelica Harris, the founder and CEO of Top Tutors for Us. We're an online platform that connects minority high school students and middle school students with minority college tutors, so tutors who actually look like the students from top universities, we like to say from Howard to Harvard, for standardized test prep and academic skill building. Welcome to the first of many Road to College presentations. Our goal at Top Tutors is to not only prepare your children for these very crucial exams, but also to equip them with the necessary information to prepare them for the college admissions process with confidence. So today's presentation is hosted by Washington University in St. Louis, so right in our backyard. We are honored to have Justin Wilson, the Associate Director of Undergrad Admissions for Diversity Recruitment and Access, who will share valuable tips on applying to selected universities. And he'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, Justin Wilson.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Angelica, and thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate you all. I am here to really give you the tips and tricks that I know and have learned through this work to help you navigate this process. And let me just start by saying, the college search admissions process is not an easy one by any way, shape or form, and it has gotten increasingly more difficult since even I went in. And I can't, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not that old. So it has changed drastically since I started through this process. And I'm here today to help you all figure out, okay, well, what do I do to make sure I'm putting my best foot forward? We're going to be talking a lot about specifically highly selective schools, which is exactly what Top Tutors for Us is focused on as well. So it makes sense, but I want to also highlight that a lot of the tips and tricks that I'll be giving you today through this presentation will also be replicable through all of your college search processes, whether you're looking at your local state school, whether you're looking at a small private liberal arts school that's less selective, et cetera, et cetera. So the work that I'm doing today is to really prepare you for all different types of searches. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started with my official presentation. All right. So, oop, there we go. Um, so this is our Road to College presentation on navigating highly selective admissions. Obviously, there's a beautiful picture of our WashU Brookings Hall in the background, but that's not what we're here to focus on. We're here to focus on the content. So today we are going to, or excuse me, tonight we're going to be talking about what does it mean to be a highly selective institution? What does the application review process look like? Both looking at how do you create a profile and an application, as well as how do we review that application. And then we're also going to be talking about your role in the process and what you can expect. So let's identify highly selective. So simply put, highly selective is just a measure of how difficult it is to be admitted into the institution. There are several different types of highly selective institutions. There are the large research land grant institutions, the small liberal arts institutions that are highly selective, and everything in between. But one thing sets them apart from the other institutions. So these are the top 50, about top 50 universities in the United States as classified by the US News World Report. And in terms of what it means to be highly selective, it means that their admission rate is less than 30% of their applicants. So let's say we are talking about a school that is 100 students in each admitted class. That means that or excuse me, there are 100 applicants for a school. That means that only 30 or less are going to be actually admitted into that school. Now, obviously, we don't do schools that small, right? Most colleges, universities are going to be way, 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 way larger than that. But that's what we mean when we say highly selective. So let's talk about the applications. There are so many different types of applications that these highly selective institutions will accept, including the Common App, which I know most of you all have heard of before. The Coalition app, which is a little bit younger than the Common App, but does pretty much the same thing and does so with more of an access focus. We are a QuestBridge partner school, and most of these highly selectives are going to be QuestBridge partner schools. QuestBridge is an organization that specifically works towards eliminating the undermatching of highly qualified students of color, first generation, and low income students with these top tier institutions, these highly selective institutions. And then, of course, there are applications that are going to be institution specific. So you'll find them right on their website. And they're going to be different than any of these larger national organizations or applications that you see here as well. So depending on what schools you're going to be applying to, you might see some schools that only accept the Common App, some schools that accept Common App and Coalition App, some schools that don't have any Common App or Coalition App ties, but they only have an institution-specific application, and a little bit of everything in between. But you'll want to make sure that when you are looking at the different colleges and universities that you're going to be applying to, you're applying in the best way possible. So as many of those students, or as many of those schools, excuse me, that are on the Common App, you want to go ahead and use the Common App to apply to those schools. If they're not on the Common App and they have their institution-specific application, fantastic. Go ahead and apply using one of those institution-specific applications. If you are applying to one of the 52 QuestBridge partner schools and you want to go specifically for the National College Match process through QuestBridge, then of course you're going to use the QuestBridge application, but you also have the opportunity of applying for schools outside of the QuestBridge Partner School network through, again, any of these other applications. You're also going to need to understand the difference between all different application rounds that exist out there within the highly selective realm. So I hope that many of you have heard about all these different application rounds. You see, we have early decision, which is going to be an early round. You're going to apply early. You're going to find out whether or not you've been admitted early, and you're also going to usually find out about your need-based financial aid early if you apply and are admitted through early decision. Now, early decision is a binding round. So if that says, if you are applying early decision, you are essentially saying, if I get into this school, I'm willing to tell all the other schools that I've applied to, hey, I think I have to go to this school. Like, I'm going to commit to my early decision application school over all these other applications that I have out there. So early decision is binding, and you'll see some schools that only have one early decision round. You'll see some schools like WashU that have early decision one and early decision two, but all of those are going to be binding rounds. You also might see for some highly selective schools the early action. And the early action is, again, where you're going to find out whether or not you've been admitted and typically what your need-based financial aid is going to look like early, but it is not binding. So you can apply to a school that has early action and then say you do get accepted. You don't have to go ahead and negate all of the other applications that you have out there. You still have the opportunity of seeing how will the other applications that you've put out there kind of fall into place and what your financial aid looks for all those other schools um, before committing to what your dream school is going to look like. Then, of course, there's regular decision. That is essentially where the majority of students are going to be applying. And regular decision is essentially where, again, you get to play the field. You don't get to know early whether or not you've been admitted. You don't get to know early what your need-based financial aid is going to look like, but you do get to really decide for yourself how many schools you're going to be applying to, whether it's 5 or 50, and then you get to, at the end of the day, at the end of this process, figure out, okay, well, what school is really my dream school? What school am I going to commit to without any sort of binding or commitments? There are also some schools, now there are very few within the highly selective realm, but there are some schools that have what we call rolling admissions, and that is essentially where they say between this date and this date, you can apply to this institution. Give us about a month, and we can get your decision back. And that also oftentimes you can find your financial aid decision as well when it comes to need-based aid with that rolling admission decision. Um, but essentially, for rolling admissions, you can apply as soon as the application opens for that school, or you can apply a week before that school closes its applications um, and starts classes for that fall. And you can still find out if you're going to be getting into that school and what your financial aid is going to look like. Sorry, my light went off. So that's rolling admissions. Then there are schools who have open admissions. Now, I can't tell you one single highly selective school that has an open admissions application round, but I can tell you open admissions is going to happen a lot of the times with our community colleges. So it's essentially you can apply anytime, January through December, any day, and you can find out whether or not you're going to get into that school. Typically, open admissions operates on a semester basis. So if you apply between January and May, you're going to be applying for the fall semester. If you apply May through December, you're going to be applying for the spring semester. But that's what an open admissions is. Essentially, you're applying. These schools who have open admission have very few requirements and pretty much let most of the students who are applying to the school in. So like I said, you won't really see open admissions with a highly selective school, but that is essentially what that open admissions application round is. So there's so many different application rounds here. You can see on the other side of my screen what WashU offers. So like I said, we are Questbridge School. We do have early decision one and early decision two. We do not offer early action. And then we do have regular decision as well. Oh, and here's my slide where it explains all of those different things that I've already explained to you. So you can see what the differences between early decision, early action, regular decision, rolling decision, and open admissions are. And now we're going to talk about the different parts of the college application. So you can see that most of these highly selective schools are going to require a couple of different things that will make it so that your application is not fully complete until you've submitted all of these. Those are transcripts, your activities list or resume. Some of these schools will require demonstrated interest slash interviews. WashU does not, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. Standardized test scores. Most highly selectives are still in the realm where they are going to be optional, test optional, but there are a lot of schools that are moving back to requiring testing, like MIT and Dartmouth, for example. And then most of these highly selective schools are going to require at least one essay or personal statement. And some of them are even going to require some supplemental short answer questions as well. We're going to get to that a little bit. And then letters of recommendation are also going to be required as a part of most of these highly selective applications for colleges and universities. So why do we take all of that into account? Why do we require all of those pieces of your application? And then also, what do we do with those optional pieces, whether it's an optional interview or an optional 90-second video or optional short answer supplements that we request from you? What do we do with all of that information? So with a highly selective school, the admissions committee looking at your application and reviewing your application for admission is going to take a look and evaluate every single component, both of the ones that we do require, as well as any extra information or optional pieces that you do submit as well. We're going to take a look at every single piece of that application before we make any decisions on whether or not you're going to be admissible to the institution. So we are really desiring to make the best community as possible. And that means that we're looking for a couple different things. We're looking for that academic fit, making sure that in high school you've taken a rigorous curriculum and that you've made good grades taking that rigorous curriculum. And then, of course, if you are submitting testing, that testing shows us that you are ready for the academic world that this college or university provides. We're also looking for that community fit. So we're looking for a quality list of extracurricular activities where we can see that you are passionate about the things you're involved in. You've maybe been involved in civic engagement and service opportunities. Maybe you have a part-time job. Maybe you're involved in athletics, but whatever it is that your involvement looks like, we want to see that it is varied and that it is showing us that you have leadership potential. And the ability to really kind of collaborate. We're also, of course, within that community fit, going to be looking at who your letters of recommendations are coming from and what they have to say about you, as well as what you have to say about yourself through the essay. So we're taking a look at all of these different pieces, like I said, of your application to decide whether or not you might be a good fit for the institution. And there really is no true one piece of the application with a true holistic review process. There's no one piece that is going to contribute to an automatic deny when it comes to your application. We are going to take a look at everything and synthesize all of that information, and then we will figure out whether or not you might be a good fit. So, we also have to understand holistic admissions in the with the caveats of institutional priorities. So these institutional priorities are priorities that we have that guide us on how we build a class. Some of those institutional priorities are going to be like a duh, right? Like we want to have a kind of an equal sex and gender balance, right? We want to make sure that we have equal balances between all of our different academic divisions that we might house on our campus. We're going to want to make sure that we look at the academic rigor again of students who are coming from all these different high schools and making sure that they have what it takes to be successful academically on our campus, based on the context of their high school as well. Bringing high schools into it, we might also say, okay, well, we want to have, as an institution, 60% of students coming from public high schools, let's say 30 coming from private high schools and 10% coming from charter high schools, right? We might have all of these different institutional priorities that really guide us in how we're going to build this class. One big, and I really want to talk about this in the wake of the Supreme Court decision. Obviously, it's been a year from now, but I want to talk about one big institutional priority being racial and ethnic diversity. Now, with the Supreme Court decision, I'm sure you all have followed it or at least have an inkling of what happened. The SCOTUS decided that we were no longer, as colleges and universities, allowed to utilize race and ethnicity as markers that will inform our decision on whether or not to admit a student. So with that SCOTUS decision, we are still dedicated to um, delivering a class each year that represents the larger global society. So we have to have a diverse class. We want to make sure that we have classes that are racial and ethnically diverse, as well as diverse in terms of your first generation status, whether you're coming from a low income, moderate income, or high income background, whether you're coming from an urban, suburban, etc. background. We need to make sure that we have diversity on our college campus. We are no longer able to just look at a box you checked and say, okay, well, we need to make sure that we have this many Black students and this many Hispanic students and this many etc. students to make that diverse class. But we are still utilizing the tools that we have within our application to make sure that our classes really are diverse and represent that global perspective. You also need to understand that these institutional priorities can change year to year. So you might say, okay, well, I know that WashU is really looking to build their data science major, which we were doing about 2 years ago when it was a brand new major. So, yes, 2 years ago, you might have had a little bit of an easier shot at getting into our data science program because we're trying to build that program. But now that it's been 2 years, we have a pretty robust data science program in terms of population and numbers within it. So it might not necessarily be an institutional priority for us right now to really highlight our recruitment and enrollment efforts within data science, right? So that's kind of how institutional priorities can change and shift, but they are all important. These institutional priorities are coming, typically speaking, from the chancellor or the president of the institution, all the way down to the admissions office. So we are making sure that we are following those institutional priorities for the betterment of course, the institution itself, as well as each individual incoming class. So let's talk about your role in this college search process. So one question that I always get, and this usually actually comes from parents more than students, but one question is, what can I consider doing right now to prepare for the college search process? Obviously, you all are in your summer between years, whether you're in your summer between your junior and senior year or your sophomore and junior year, et cetera, et cetera. This advice is really more geared towards students who are getting ready to start that college search process. And what you can start doing right now is a couple different things. You're going to want to make sure that you are maintaining relationships with your admissions officers, myself included. If you are interested in considering WashU, definitely feel free to get in touch with me. And of course, I will send my email address through the chat when I'm done with my official presentation. But definitely make sure that you are connecting with admissions officers from all the different schools that you are looking into, especially if that school does require demonstrated interest within the application process. And demonstrated interest is essentially just the amount of times that you raise your hand saying, hey, I'm interested in your school. Hey, I'm interested in your school. Hey, I'm going to a campus visit. I want to make sure that you know I'm interested in your school. Oh, hey, I'm coming to a college fair where I know I'm going to see you. That is me saying, hey, I'm interested in your school, right? WashU, I want to say very clearly, WashU does not look at demonstrated interest within our application process anymore. But for those schools who do, maintaining that relationship with your admissions officers is very, very important. You also want to make sure that you are going to your college counselors and your advisors and your school administration, and making sure that they understand what your college process search is going to look like. You want to make sure that your college counselor understands what your school list looks like. You're going to want to make sure your college counselor understands what it is that you're going to be looking into in terms of your necessity for financial aid, in terms of your mobility out of state. All of these things are really important. So you're going to want to make sure both your parents and legal guardians, as well as your school counselors, understand what your priorities are in terms of the college search process. You're also, of course, going to want to make sure that you understand itself what kind of selectivity you're going to be looking for when it comes to the college search process. Am I looking for a school within the top 10, in the top 20, in the top 50? What does this mean? And also, you want to make sure that you understand why. Why am I looking at schools within this bracket? Um, and am I underselling myself? Or, you might be overselling yourself. Maybe you're not necessarily a great fit for Princeton, the number one in the nation, right? And that's okay because most students are not a great fit for Princeton. But you're going to want to look at what that selectivity is, and what that means for your college search. So, and this is actually more for the parents as well. So this question is, how can I help my students? So you're going to want to make sure parents, if we have any parents on the line right now, we're going to want to make sure that we are encouraging our students to submit the necessary application materials by the deadlines. And it says on here on their behalf. You're going to want to make sure that you are submitting your financial aid information on their behalf, but the actual application materials you're not going to be submitting on their behalf. You're going to want to make sure that you are encouraging your student to submit on their behalf, right? You're also going to want to help your student reflect, review their current activities and their goals in terms of the college search process. You're going to want to make sure that you are helping your student explore the colleges and universities that might be on their college list. And that is actually key. And students, I'm talking to you as well. It is so easy to think about a school. Oh my God, I love that school because I'm looking at their website and everything is beautiful on their website. And maybe I've had a conversation with an admissions officer and they're obviously telling me all the great things about this school. And so I love it. I want to go there. That's my top choice. And then maybe you go and actually visit the campus and you see it for yourself, you feel it for yourself, and you recognize, actually, this isn't what I want at all. It is so important to visit the college campuses and the university campuses that you have on your college list to really make sure you see for yourself, is this for me? I'm living this right now in this moment on a temporary basis. Can I see myself going here for the next 4 years? Right? And then, of course, you're going to want to learn about all the different access and pre-college and college visit programs, whether it's a fly-in that you might be able to apply for any of the schools that you're looking into, or maybe it's a special trip that the school is hosting where you can come and learn more about what it means to be a pre-med student at WashU, let's say, or maybe it is a pre-college program that you can do over the summer where you can earn college credit from that institution. Um, and then be able to again learn more about the school but also already have started college classes at these schools that are maybe your top schools, right? So thinking about some things you can do through the application or before the application process is thinking about the different access and pre-college and college visit programs. So this is all the different ways that you can get in touch with us on a very formal way. Obviously, you can call us, you can email us. You can also get involved in our social medias. We definitely want to encourage you to follow us on Instagram. We do have a TikTok. We have a Snapchat. We have a Snapchat. Excuse me. We have, I guess it's the formerly known as Twitter, but we have an X. All that good stuff. So definitely feel free to follow us on all those things as well. And like I said, I'm going to send my official email into the chat as well after my presentation, which is right now. So it is time for questions. I wanted to make sure that I left as many as much time as possible to answer any questions you all have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to throw my email into the chat. And then I want to hear from you all. What do you all want to know? I will give you the flexibility of either throwing a question into the chat if you don't want to come off mute, or if you do want to come off mute and show us your face, definitely feel free to ask your question in person as well. I'll also say while we're kind of thinking of questions to ask, it is absolutely okay as well if you're like, I don't really have a fully formulated question in my mind right now. I just know that I want to know more about this thing right here. And so maybe you don't have a question, but you can say, Justin, talk more about how to make myself most competitive within a pre-med application pool. Or Justin, tell me more about like extracurricular activities and what colleges are looking for, what really stands out in terms of the extracurricular activities list on the college application, or really anything. But that's what I'm here for, is for you to ask questions. Yeah, Colin.
Hello, Justin. Thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to ask, I went to a college tour earlier this year, or a
Awesome.
college fair, sorry, and the representative for WashU told me that there will be a new school of public health, in the next year, and I just wanted to ask if students who are applying to that school will have to write a supplement for that specific school.
Ooh, that's a great question. That's a great question. So yes, for those of you who didn't know, we are starting our sixth division, School of Public Health. We just broke ground on that building a couple months ago, and it is slowly going up. So we are actually going to be for this next cycle, we're going to be asking students who are interested in public health to apply directly on the application for it. In terms of your question about is there a specific supplement that students will have to complete for this new School of Public Health, there isn't going to be a separate supplement for the school itself, but our required supplement is what are you interested in studying and why? And so with this new school, you will be able to say, okay, I know that I'm interested in studying public health. Now I just have to articulate why my interest exists, right? Obviously, a lot of us might have a heightened interest in public health because of the pandemic, but we want you to look even more granularly into your own self and say, okay, public health is important because XYZ. Public health interests me, or I'm passionate about this area because of this and this and this. And so that's what we're going to ask for in terms of your supplement. We're not going to necessarily ask you a specific question about public health, just tell us what you're interested in studying and why. Good question.
Thank you.
Of
May I
course.
also ask how to make yourself more competitive as a pre-med student?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about it. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because not for nothing, we do pre-med very, very well here at WashU. And so I like to kind of give us our flowers and brag about it a little bit. So pre-med is a fantastic opportunity on our campus. I want to say, before I say what it is, I want to say what it is not. Pre-med on our campus is not a major in itself. It is a pre-professional program. So you can major in literally whatever you want to major in at WashU and still be pre-med, whether that is biology or chemistry, or whether you decide to major in biomedical engineering for interest. Or I have a student right now who's a junior who is majoring in dance and is still a pre-med student. So you can major in whatever and still be pre-med. The pre-med program is designed to make sure that you are getting a robust advising structure to make sure that you are ready for med school applications once it is appropriate to start submitting those. So a couple things that we do within that pre-med program is that we do offer one-on-one advising where you're going to meet one-on-one with an advisor at least once a semester. Most pre-med students actually meet with their pre-med advisor multiple times a semester, and you are going to be talking with them about, okay, well, what are my interests within medicine? What are my pre-med kind of goals here? All of that good stuff. What kinds of med schools am I looking for? We also do have a two different classes that are required for students who are going through pre-med that help you prepare for the MCAT. We also have a lot of research and study abroad and internship opportunities, shadowing opportunities through our own med school, as well as med schools, you know, internationally, that'll help you really prepare for that next step, which again, hopefully is med school. So I give all of that context to tell you, okay, here's how you can make sure that you are going to be a competitive applicant within our pre-med program, because it is very robust. Number one, you're going to want to make sure that you're taking the appropriate curriculum to jump right into the pre-med program. So in high school, we're going to want to make sure that you have taken at least one calculus course. We're also going to want to make sure that you've taken an advanced biology course, an advanced chemistry course, a physics course if you can, build that into your curriculum. We want to see that you've taken the natural sciences and that you've done well in them. So we want to make sure your grades are up. We're also going to be looking for students in the context of what is available to you to see, have you done any sort of high school research, or have you been involved in HOSA or Future Health Professionals of America, or any of these different student organizations, whether it's tied to your high school or whether it's on the national organizational side that is related to the medical sciences, right? We're going to look for that exposure outside of the classroom. I want to say very quickly, if you're not a part of a school or a community that a lot of students will do high school research in, that's okay, right? We're not going to necessarily hold that against you and say you have to have research on your extracurricular activities list, or else you're not going to get into our pre-med program. We take into account the context in which you're applying, right? So that's important. But we also, the last thing I'll give you in terms of how to make sure that you are putting yourself in with the best foot forward in terms of applying for a pre-med program, you're going to want to make sure that you are able to articulate very consistently across your application why pre-med, right? And I say that because we get students who will apply to pre-med and say, well, I want to be pre-med because I want to go to med school because I heard that doctors make a lot of money. Or I want to apply to be a doctor because I want to help people. The second one is a really good, option, right? Like you want to help people. Great. We love that. But let's deep dig a little bit even more deeper. What personal connection do you have that makes you want to apply for pre-med to go to med school? What is it about medicine? And is there anything specific within medicine that you're like, this really fascinates me. This interests me. I took a class in high school and I learned about cardiovascular surgery, and that's what I'm really into. That's what I want to pursue as a potential pre-med student. Really getting specific in your answers about why do I want to study pre-med is going to be really, really helpful and is going to set you apart and make you most competitive within most of these pre-med application pools. So that was a lot of information. And I know I gave you a little bit more information than what you asked for as well. Did that answer your question? And is there any like side questions you have about that?
Yes, thank you. That was a great response. One question that I do have is I have taken advanced chemistry,
Okay.
but for the next year I signed up for organic chemistry instead of advanced biology, and they're
Okay.
during the same period. So I wasn't sure. You said we want to see students who have taken advanced biology and advanced chemistry. Was that sort of an either or thing or more of a both? You wanted to
Yeah,
see.
no, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. So, in general, the most successful pre-med applicants that we have in our pool have taken advanced chemistry and advanced biology. I will say, in terms of our requirements, as long as you've taken at least one biology, at least one chemistry, at least one calculus, and at least one physics course, then you're set. You're good. Um, and if you have taken an advanced uh, course within one of those areas, then you're fine, right? I'm just saying, yeah, again, the most competitive students are going to be having had both advanced chemistry and advanced biology within our application pool. Don't stress, right? Because you've taken advanced chemistry and then you're also now going to be taking advanced organic chemistry, right? And so you're good, right? You have done what we've asked for on the very base. Um, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Of course. Excellent. So I see some questions in the chat here as well. Let's see, there's one question. Can I talk more about the profile of an admitted CS student? So CS computer science, profile for the admitted CS student, definitely a student who has taken calculus. Again, most of our STEM focused areas are the most competitive students in those application pools have taken calculus. Um, we also really love to see for students who are interested in computer science that they've taken a computer science elective, whether that is AP Computer Science or whether that's a Project Lead the Way course or whether that's some sort of technology and STEM focused course offered at their high school. That is really, really helpful, and that makes students most competitive within our computer science realm as well. So calculus and then some sort of technology course if it's available at your high school. We also see in terms of CS pretty high math scores on testing if you submit testing. So our middle 50% for the ACT are going to be a 33 through a 35. For SAT, it's going to be 1500 to a 1550. And so if you're submitting test scores as a CS student, as a computer science student, you're going to want to make sure that you have seen your scores in those middle 50%. If they're not in those middle 50%, that's okay as well. And it's probably still a great score, but you might want to reconsider whether or not you submit that score if it's below that ACT of a 33 or the SAT of a 1500. And also, okay, second question, can you speak to the community at WashU, specifically any school traditions, the town of SCL, etc.? So I can. Let's talk about the community at WashU first. We are absolutely a school that prides itself on being a collaborative environment, an environment where students are really encouraged and slash forced to work with each other to create innovative solutions to our global problems, right? There are schools out there, and I'm not going to name any names, I'm not going to tell on anyone, but there are some schools out there where they pit their students against each other for the top internship opportunities, for the top research opportunities, all of that good stuff. And you feel that kind of like rat race mentality on that school's campus. For us, we want to make sure that students understand point blank, innovation does not exist in a vacuum. You can't work against each other. You have to take what you know and what I know and what he knows and what she knows and what they know, mix it all together, learn from each other as much as we're learning from our faculty. And then that's how you kind of shift the paradigm and make innovative change, right? So very collaborative community on our campus. Also very active community on our campus. So we have over 450 student organizations on campus. On average, our students are involved in at least 3 different student organizations holding leadership in at least one of them. And most of our students are holding way more than that in terms of leadership in our student orgs. Um, and then they are really, really active within their specific areas of interest in terms of our extracurricular activities. And so if you are into the fine and performing arts, guess what? You've got 14 different a cappella groups to choose from, and you've got a pep band, and you've got our different theater organizations on campus, and just et cetera, et cetera. If you're interested in athletics, we've got NCAA Division III club sports and intramural sports. If you're interested in organizations based within your major, we've got an organization for you, regardless of what your major is. If you are interested in fun and quirky things, we've got our WashU butter churning student group called Woo Churn, where you can just get together with friends and learn how to churn butter, right? Like that's it. So you've got a lot of different organizations on campus, and our students are involved on campus. In terms of traditions, one of my favorite traditions on our campus is called Wild, Walk and Lay Down. It's a concert series that we host every semester where we bring some pretty big name artists to campus. In the past, we've had Childish Gambino, Chance the Rapper, we've had Lizzo, we've got Carly Rae Jepsen. This past spring, we had Joey Badass. So, like, it's just a really cool, fun, free concert for our students and faculty and staff. That's nice as well, where you get to kind of be in community with each other and listen to some good music. The last part of this is talking about the city of St. Louis. St. Louis is one of my favorite things to talk about as someone who is not local to St. Louis. I'm originally from Central Florida. I moved up here for grad school, and I never left, and it's been 12 years now. I love St. Louis. I think it's a fantastic city. There's so many things to love about St. Louis. I'm going to give you a couple things. So we are a mid-sized metropolitan area of just about 3 million people in total. And we have 79 different distinct neighborhoods in St. Louis. So it doesn't matter what you're into, it doesn't matter what you're looking to go into or be involved with outside of our campus environment, you're going to be able to find it. Whether it's hiking and biking and crafting the trails, you've got that. If you're looking for the fine and performing arts, we've got that. If you're looking for a big food scene, I'm a big foodie myself. I can talk your ear off about the St. Louis food. There's so much to do here in St. Louis, and we really encourage students to get out there and explore. Obviously, we want you to have fun on campus, but we also do allow students to get out there with their free Metro card. Every single admitted student gets a free Metro card with unlimited rides that'll take you really anywhere that the Metro goes in the St. Louis City area. So we really want to encourage students to get out there and to find their vibe within St. Louis. So again, a lot of information out there that I told you about St. Louis, about WashU, about our traditions. What else are you guys curious about?
I have a question if no one else has one. So, as a test prep company focusing primarily on preparing students for ACTs and SATs,
Yeah.
after COVID, most universities like WashU, shifted to test optional.
Mm-hmm.
So, should you do you advise for students to submit their scores, or when they should not submit their scores? Can you talk a little bit about should they submit their scores to test optional universities?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that. So, first and foremost, this is not a question that you asked, but I'm going to answer this real quick. Should I even worry about testing anymore? The answer is yes, right? And I'm not just saying that because we're here for top tutors for us, right? The answer is yes. You should be thinking about testing because there are more and more and more schools who are going back to test required, and you never know when that shift is going to happen. So, um, what I typically tell students is when it comes to the test optional piece, should I submit my scores? Should I not submit my scores? Oh, sorry, my light keeps going off. Um, my first question is, okay, well, what are the middle 50% test ranges for that school? Look at those middle 50%, and if your test score is within that middle 50%, your application is not going to be hurt at all if you submit that testing, right? That means that that testing is on average what the school is receiving. Now, I will say with being test optional for as many years as we have been, because the pandemic lasted for forever, we have seen an explosion in our middle 50% scores. So, like I said, 33 through a 35 and a 1500 to a 1550, almost no one has those scores. And if you do, fantastic, but most people will still not have those scores. And maybe you're still at a 1490 or a 30 on the ACT. Those are still great scores, but I might encourage you to hold off on submitting those scores to a school if those scores are outside of those middle 50% right there. My caveat there is if you are approaching a STEM related field, if you are saying to me, I want to go into pre-med or I want to go into engineering, maybe your overall score is not as high as it should be to break into that middle 50%, but maybe you've maxed out or almost maxed out on what your math score is within that those subsections. That might be a good reason to submit your scores still. So even if you have a, let's say, a 1400, but you have an 800 on the math, my goodness, yes, submit that because that's showing us as a potential pre-med student or as a potential engineering student or computer science student, the math is there for you, right? And we can see that, we can applaud that. That is for a lot of our STEM programs, one of the most important pieces that we're looking for in terms of that academic rigor is can they focus on the math? Can they keep up with the math at WashU? Those tests, they'll show us that. So that's my caveat, right? Even if your test scores are below the middle 50%, if you have really, really high math scores and you're wanting to go into STEM, great, submit those scores. That doesn't necessarily translate though into if you're wanting to go in the humanities. So let's say you're wanting to go into a major within the humanities and you have a really, really high English score, or history, social studies score. Unfortunately, I would still probably tell you if your testing doesn't meet the middle 50% for your overall testing, if it doesn't meet the middle 50% for WashU, I would probably tell you to still submit a test optional application. Um, and that's purely because the humanities faculty, they care a lot less about scores in general than our STEM faculty do, right? And that's pretty true across the board when it comes to highly selective schools. So that was a really good question. There was another piece to that that I wanted to talk about, but it's not coming to. Oh, what I was going to say too, and this is again a question that you did not ask, but one that I would love to answer in terms of testing is I always like to tell students if you can afford to do so, I would absolutely try to take both the SAT and the ACT. And I'm speaking partly from experience and partly again because I've been doing this for about 10 years now. Um, Students will typically do better on one test than the other. And so if you're trying to get those highest scores that you can when it comes to testing, um, you might find yourself as a better ACT test taker than an SAT test taker, or vice versa. I killed the ACT, right? SAT, I don't even want to admit what those scores were. So you might want to take both and see really, what kind of test really matches with what your vibe is, right? What your abilities are. But again, you didn't ask my information or you didn't ask my opinion on that, so I'll stop there. I think we have about 10 more minutes. Yeah, Colin, you got a question?
Is there a higher acceptance rate for the early decision application pools?
Ooh, good question. So it depends school by school. I can only speak to WashU on that end. And there is. So our acceptance rate for early decision one and two combined is roughly about 23 to 24%. And our overall admission rate, including early decision one, early decision two, and regular decision, is going to be about 11%. Um, so a little bit less than half of what our regular or early decision one and two application admission rates are. Mostly that is because there are far fewer students applying within early decision than there are in regular decision, right? So it's kind of a numbers game. You're putting yourself in the application process against probably about 5,000 students in early decision one, versus if you're applying in regular decision, you're applying against a good 25,000, right? So it's just a numbers game in that end. But yes, we definitely encourage students. If you already know, WashU is my number one school, I would go there in a heartbeat. Apply ED, and applying ED does technically mean that you might have a little bit of a higher admission rate and a higher chance of getting in. Good question. I also do see another question in the chat, and I missed this before, so I apologize, but let me get to you. So, what are the student faculty relationships like? Let me start with saying our student faculty ratio is 7 to 1. So, we really try hard to make sure that you're actually developing relationships with your faculty as a student here. On average, about 80% of our classes on campus are 30 people or less. So we don't really do those large lecture halls with 200, 500 people in class. We think that's ridiculous. We don't think that that's conducive to learning. So you are really actively building relationships with your faculty when you are a student here on WashU's campus. So that's number one. Number two, why our relationships between students and faculty are so good on our campus is because of an old dean that we had way back in the day. He's since passed, but um, this dean kind of created this um, unofficial motto for WashU of getting to know each student by name and story. And so that was kind of adopted by our entire faculty in terms of recognizing that each student comes with a different story. Each student comes with a different set of experiences and identities that allow them to move through the world in different ways. Each student comes with their own set of baggage, let's just be honest, and their own understanding of the college process, right? And so you can't just choose a one size fits all model for how you work with students. You have to recognize that this student, Colin, is a different individual student than this student, Justin, is a different individual student than this student, Angelica. And we have to get to know these students, who they are, what their name is, of course, but also what their story is to make sure that we are meeting their needs and meeting them where they are. So that is something that, again, was passed down from this dean who was again since passed on, but that has really held with WashU in terms of that student faculty relationship. You'll find that our faculty are very much so invested in making sure they understand who you are, what you need from them, and how they can be of assistance to you as an individual student, not just as a collective. This is my classroom of 30 to 50 people, right? So they're strong, I would say. And obviously I'm a little biased, but yeah, I would say the student faculty relationships are very strong. Great question. What else do you guys want to know? Colin, I know I see something brewing there. Yeah, go for it.
Are students guaranteed room and board for all 4 years?
They are. So, and let me talk a little bit more about that too. So students are actually required to live on campus for 2 years. This is a recent change. We usually only require students to live on campus for the first year. Recently, we've decided actually we need you to be a part of our on-campus community for a little bit longer, right? So 2 years required, and then we do guarantee housing for all 4 years. We do not guarantee on-campus housing for all 4 years, but let me explain to you what that looks like. So WashU actually has both on-campus housing options as well as off-campus housing options within it's called the Loop. It's a neighborhood of St. Louis. It's about a 5 to 10 minute walking distance, walk away from our main campus, away from the Danforth campus. There are shuttles as well, so you don't necessarily have to walk. But we do offer a lot of apartment and housing options for you that WashU owns off campus. So we do guarantee that you will have some sort of WashU living experience if you want for all 4 years. Um, it just might not necessarily be fully on campus. That being said, I do know plenty of upperclassmen students who have lived on campus for all 4 years. So it is possible. Good question, Colin. Excellent. I think I have time for maybe one more question, and then I do have something that I want to leave with you as well. So if there is one more question that I can answer from you guys, and if not, I'll give you some time back too. No? Okay. Well, yeah, Colin, go for it.
All right. So my school uses a narrative report system instead of a letter grade GPA.
Sure.
I was wondering if you as an admissions counselor would rather see a test score for a student coming to your school with no grades prior.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a really niche question. So I really appreciate you asking that, Colin. So for students who are coming from schools that are more narrative-based grades than actual grade letters, um, testing is actually helpful because testing is that standardized, everyone gets the same kind of score range versus, if I can't say, oh yeah, Colin got an A in calculus, it's more of that narrative like Colin did really well in calculus and, you excelled specifically in these specific areas. That's a little bit harder to measure, right? So if we do have testing that you can submit, that would help us more easily measure where you are and what your academic ability is, right? Now, again, that being said, though, I don't want you to feel that pressure of submitting testing if your testing isn't quite where it needs to be in terms of that middle 50%, right? So, obviously you're working with top tutors. Hopefully you'll be able to get to that point. Maybe you even are within that middle 50% already. But if you are within that middle 50% or maybe just slightly below, that would be a great thing to do is to submit that testing. However, maybe your testing is still significantly below what our middle 50% test scores are. In that case, what I want to be very clear with you about is that we do get to know the context behind your specific schools. It is literally my job to look at each school that is within my purview. And if I have any questions about, well, what does this look like? Or why are things shaped like this on the transcripts? Or why is it narrative versus, actual grades? It is literally my job to get to know that context behind the school and to then understand, okay, now that I know the context, this is how I can evaluate the student and whether or not they're a good fit for WashU. So even without testing, it'll take me honestly a little bit more work if you don't have testing to really kind of judge for myself and for the rest of our committee, is this student a good fit? But I mean, that's my job, right? So it's my job to do this work. And I don't want you to feel pressure to submit that testing if you really don't feel like that testing encapsulates who you are as a student and what your abilities are. It's a really good question. So I know we are with 1 minute to go, and I want to leave you guys with this. This is not the last time that you can, and this is not the last time that you should be asking questions. Like I said before, when I gave you some advice about how to navigate this experience, you absolutely want to make sure that you are getting in contact with your admissions officers for all the different schools that you're looking into and asking them these same questions. They might have different opinions. Their school might be doing different things than what I've said WashU is doing. So you absolutely want to rely on us to make sure that you are navigating this experience as best as possible, that you're putting your best foot forward. Understanding that, again, all of these different schools do things very minusculely different than each other, right? So you already have my contact information. For most of you, I should be your admissions officer like officially. If I'm not, I'll still answer your questions, and I'll also pull in your official admissions officer so that you have that contact information. But you want to make sure that you're getting in touch with me if you're interested in WashU. If you're interested in Vandy, there's an admissions officer for that. If you're interested in Northeastern or Northwestern or U Chicago, you're getting in touch with them and ask those questions. We don't expect you to know anything about this process, because this is your first time students. This is your first time going through this. The only reason I know what I know is, again, because I've been doing this for 10 years now. So ask questions. Don't feel like you're asking stupid questions. There is no stupid question. And I look forward to hearing from you guys if you are truly interested in WashU.